Greetings, everyone. It is such an honor and privilege to be back in conversation with Pam Gregory today, my dear friend and internationally known astrologer, author, and lighthouse for all of us in these stormy times. So thank you for being back in conversation, Pam.
Always delighted to share with you, Heather. You are one of the most loving, generous, kind-hearted people I know, actually, as well as being an incredibly gifted astrologer, author, teacher, clinical psychologist, shaman, all of that. And you hold a very unique position, I think, in our world to help to guide us through these times. So always a joy to share with you.
Thank you. Thank you. So today we're going to be talking about our dance with Neptune. Neptune in its final degrees, Neptune in its moving into sextile with Uranus and Pluto, and its coming conjunction with Saturn. So it's a very Neptunian time. And let's start with talking about how we both see the meaning of Neptune in these final degrees of Pisces, and particularly in the final degree now for the next couple of months.
Yeah. Yeah, and this is really going to span until 2026, end of January 2026, because it's sort of in and out of that final degree of Pisces and beginning of Aries from now, really all the way through. And I think it's helpful to remember that it isn't just the last degree of the zodiac, this is actually also the world axis. So anything from 28 of the mutable signs, Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, Pisces, or up to 2 degrees of the cardinal signs, Aries, Cancer, Libra, Capricorn, that is known as the world axis. So whatever is unfolding with Neptune and what we're going to be talking about today is going to be very big on the public stage. But if you listening have an angle or a planet between those points, 28 of the mutables to 2 of the cardinals, you will be very activated by Neptune and what we're sharing today. But it's so interesting, isn't it, Heather? Because it isn't just Neptune, it's also Pluto's hovering at that final degree, September to November this year. Uranus moves to its anaretic degree starting mid next year, doesn't move fully into Gemini until 2026. So, we have such a strong theme of endings and beginnings, but certainly 29 of Pisces is the very last degree of the zodiac. And I see that as representing the end of a world, but not the ending of the world. And I think, that's very much how I see it. And so for me, it really is the end of the illusions,
Mm.
the lifting of the veil in a very big way. And um, for some, you may feel kind of there's a fog that comes in with Neptune sometimes, that you're adrift in a void and you can't quite find your footing. And with that, I'd recommend be in nature, bare feet on the grass as the antidote to this kind of Neptunian drift. But I always think you can change gear with your transit. So if you in that kind of droopy, weepy, foggy, don't know who I am, where I'm going, you can switch that into something incredibly creative, spiritual, listen to music, read poetry, meditate, do breath work. You can literally, if you use up the energy positively, it stops it manifesting in such a foggy, drifty way in your life, because the music has to play somehow. Music, Neptune, the music has to play somehow. But we can choose as to how that level manifests, really.
Oh, that's beautifully said, Pam, because you and I both believe strongly that how these energies manifest relates to our level of consciousness and how we work with them. And I see the Neptune in the final degree of Pisces is also activating what's unresolved for us as we exit the age of Pisces.
Yeah.
And I see it as guiding us to release our addictions, release our illusions, and
Yeah.
open to that mystical part of ourselves, open to that expanded consciousness.
Absolutely. And I see that as initiating a much stronger period of expanded consciousness and multidimensionality, because Neptune is so malleable. You know, it's ether, isn't it, really? And so we will have a much greater sense, I think, if we can use this well, of being truly co-creators of our reality, if we use our Neptune well. But a lot of, it's so interesting about the unresolved part, because I think we are going to have a lot of things coming up in the collective linked to water, linked to the seas, linked to pollution, linked to toxicity, the media, pharmaceutical drugs, addictions, as you say, Heather, viruses. It's linked to oil, it's linked to blood, it's linked to the immune system, it's linked to deception and lies, the illusion. So I think we're going to go through a very big period of unveiling this year and next in particular. And that needs to happen for us to step into this new world. But at the very last degree of the zodiac, yes, it's the ending of an old world, an episode in our humanity, in humanity's evolution, but it also carries with it the seed of the new. And if we can focus on the expanded consciousness, the multidimensionality, that will carry us well into this next episode for humanity, which I think is quite unique. You know, whether you talk to Dr. Jude Currivan, I know you're speaking to her soon, the wonderful cosmologist, whether you're speaking to mystics or scientists, they are all saying the same thing, that this is a very unique leap in humanity's evolution. And Neptune at the final degree of the zodiac has a very strong part to play with that.
Well, and tied in with what you're saying, I think the fact that we're now within that 5-degree orb with the sextile of Uranus in Taurus with Neptune in Pisces, Uranus is guiding us in cutting through the illusions, in seeing some of these deceptions that have been playing out in our global collective consciousness. And I see it as Uranus further activating that Neptunian expansion of our consciousness. If we're really opening to these energies at that higher level, then Neptune, which is the higher octave of Venus, is opening us to divine love, to the love and wisdom and oneness of cosmic consciousness that is in us, around us, moves through us. And one of the things, both of us have been in conversation with Jude Currivan, and she talks so much about this evolutionary leap that we're in as humanity is a movement into a unitive narrative, movement out of a sense of separation, back into a sense of our unity consciousness. And I think Neptune is guiding the way with that. And it's supporting us in opening our hearts to that love of the cosmos and that awareness, as Jude talks about, that we're in this conscious cosmos that is evolving purposefully, meaningfully. This is not all random events that are happening. We are being guided into this evolutionary leap into higher consciousness. And I believe that sextile with Uranus is activating that mystical awareness and our capacity to step out of the illusion of our sense of separation back into our realization that we're interconnected with all that is. We're part of the oneness of all that is. And that sextile with Uranus then matches the sextile that's been there with Neptune and Pluto for years now. But I see the activation of those three outermost transpersonal planets that are the higher octave, Neptune, the higher octave of Venus, Uranus, the higher octave of Mercury, Pluto, the higher octave of Mars, helping us move into that higher consciousness and into that capacity to be connecting with the wisdom of the cosmos, the love of the cosmos, and helping us learn how to integrate that and live from that place.
Yeah, it's really beautifully said, because if we do think of Neptune as unconditional love, as you've mentioned, Heather, and connection to source. And Neptune has no boundaries. So it's a sense of this is one consciousness. We are all divine fractals of this one consciousness. Uranus is higher mind, and it may link us into greater galactic connection as well, that will help to expand our consciousness. And I feel that strongly. I think that's coming down the track, starting next year, much more fully. And it may well be that we even have some devices, technology, Uranus, that help that connection to that sense of unconditional love and source. That's a possibility with that sextile. But certainly I've observed with clients who have transits, Uranus Neptune transits, almost of any kind, they can start to experience dimensions of reality they never believed existed. Mystical dimensions that are extraordinary, that they never believed existed. There's a whole kind of sudden shift in perspective to a higher level. And this is what we're going to have running for about 3 years. The 25, 26, 27, even into 28, actually. And I was doing a bit of research before this conversation, and apparently we haven't had that Neptune at the midpoint of that Uranus-Pluto trine since 1504. 1504. So this is incredibly rare, and it's very linked to creativity and almost a sort of enlightenment phase for humanity. But the more, and you really said this, Heather, but the more we can make this an inner transmutation rather than an external series of happenings, the easier this ride will be. It's quite interesting. I was looking back to when Neptune was discovered, which was in September 1846. And this was very soon after the development of photography. And this was the time when early cameras were being developed. And the word photography means drawing with light, which is really interesting, which I hadn't realized. It was also the beginning of the spiritualist movement. The Fox sisters in New York were hearing all these knocking noises, and that started the Ouija boards and, all of those kind of weird things. But it was all kind of external manifestations of Neptune. And this time around, agreeing very much with you, Heather, that the more we can make this an inner process, the better this will be, because that's what it's supposed to be, to raise our consciousness, to have this sense of connection. Because we've lived in such separation and division and polarity, and boy, is it going on big time in the world right now. Just switch on any news broadcast, you're going to hear that. The only way we are going to evolve as humanity is to go beyond that separation and polarity. It's the only way it's going to happen.
I totally agree. And, one of the things that's been profound for me, thinking about these shifts that we're in, is that shamanic understanding that as we work with these things within ourselves, everything is interconnected.
Yeah.
So as above, so below, as it is within us, so it is outside of us. So with these energies that we're in right now, we are seeing, with the Neptunian energy, increasing storms, rising of the sea level, but we're also being called to deal with those inner storms, those emotions that are arising within us that I think are coming into our consciousness to support us in healing, releasing those issues that are creating imbalances within us. And, the stories of, and I've actually done some training myself with connecting to the weather beings. And part of what I've learned from weather shamanism that goes back thousands of years is that, again, it's all about consciousness and it's all about relationship.
Yeah.
And when a shaman is called to an area that's either in drought because there is no rain, or there's an excess of storms, but there's an imbalance in the weather system, they don't go into some kind of ceremony and effort to manipulate the energies outside of them. They go into stillness and assess whatever is out of balance within them.
Yeah.
And I think it's a very powerful metaphor for how, as we become centered in ourselves, in alignment with our soul selves, opening to this higher consciousness. I believe Neptune is associated with the eighth chakra, Uranus with the crown chakra. So they're guiding us to open, as you said, open our other ways of knowing, open our, I don't see it coming as much through technology as through remembering our capacity for telepathic communication, for honoring our intuition, for downloading information from cosmic consciousness, seventh chakra, eighth chakra, so we can open those aspects of ourselves to come into alignment, to come into the eye of the storm, the inner stillness, the gifts of Neptune that then allow us to calm the stormy energies around us, both in the human turbulence that's going on the planet, but also the weather turbulence.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. And absolutely right. You know, if we're looking externally, we will never sort out the 1,000, 10,000, 100,000 problems out there. It's always about turning inwards. And I've suggested recently that people book stillness meetings with themselves, put it on the
Oh, I
calendar.
love that.
Book stillness meetings, and you'd never miss a business meeting, so you'd never miss a stillness meeting, because the solution is always internal. And you know, it's election time in many countries. I think about half the world at the moment is going through elections, and people often say, who are you voting for? Well, I have no polarity, no preferences, because actually we have to go beyond all of that polarity to create. As long as we are in polarity, we
Yes.
are going to keep on recreating that polarity and then blame the external for giving us a hard time, when actually it's coming from within us. So this really is an inside job. And when we just have bare feet on the grass, we turn inwards. I suggested an incredibly simple breath practice that anybody and everybody can do in my last update video. It's absolutely elementary. And the shift that can make in your physiology is enormous, because we're only going to see peace in the world if we see peace in ourselves, feel peace in ourselves. We're only going to see love in the world if we feel love in ourselves. So the more of us can do this, we can rapidly change timelines without all the slog and the fight of the 3D, because that takes time to change at the 3D level. It's linear, it's logical, it's fight. We should make an internal shift, and you shift timelines for yourself, and you help the collective too. So I'm absolutely with you. And I think the level of psychic sensitivity we are going to experience is like something we've never known before. Yes, absolutely. We're going to become more telepathic. Yes, we're going to have stronger healing ability. Yes, tuning into animals and trees and plants in a bigger way than ever before. But I think they're going to be psychic abilities that we can't even describe yet. Do you feel that, Heather? That are coming?
Absolutely. It's like we've narrowed to these five senses, but I think we're capable of much more than that. And I think that will be expanding. And I think as we're in that expansion, as you said, that increasing psychic sensitivity, there are gifts to that, but some of the challenges to that I hear from a lot of people in my community is it means we're also more sensitive to the energies in the collective consciousness and collective unconsciousness. And I think I love you're doing the stillness meetings. I think that is brilliant because it helps us come back to center, and it helps us also work with these energies of Neptune to release what is not ours to carry, to let go of ways we may absorb these energies from the turbulence in the collective and not get pulled into that or mired in that. And I think, as you talk about so much in your videos, that's key. How we're working with our own energies and our own consciousness to be co-creating with cosmic consciousness these new paradigms and ways of being. And I am with you in terms of practical ways we need to be grounded in this time in terms of connecting with the earth. And I think some of these ways of working with breath are incredibly valuable. The one that I love, because I'm into numerology, is breathe in to the count of 6. the energy of love.
Mm.
Hold that for the count of 2, integrating duality. Release it to the count of 8, which is the number of balance and harmony. So you're breathing in love, allowing yourself to hold that, to come into that unity consciousness, release whatever you need to release to come into balance and inner harmony. And I think it's such a simple but powerful way to be supporting us in coming into stillness. Because when we come into stillness, then I think one of the gifts of Neptune, often when I'm doing readings, I talk about when you're in an intense Neptunian time, it can feel like you're in a boat out at sea in the fog and you've lost your rudder. So what do? You can't see where you're going. You're in the wind and the waves and the storms. You trust the currents. You trust that the currents will carry you where you need to go. And I think that's the lessons from Sedna, the lessons from the Hopi prophecy of let go of the shore,
Yeah.
be in the river, be in the current. Let the current carry you where you need to go. That's the
Yeah.
gift of Neptune. We're carried by these energies of cosmic consciousness and cosmic love.
Yeah, so you're not fighting against the waves or the tide because what you resist persists. That's not going to get us anywhere. You use your intuition to very much go with the flow. It's interesting. I know people in my life who at quite a advanced age of 50 or even 60 in some cases, under strong Neptune transits, they've become artists or musicians or poets out of nowhere, out of nowhere, because they've just kind of had an instinct and trusted their intuition. So go with that inner instinct of turning inwards, because it does change your physiology. If you did blood tests before and after this kind of breath work, it would be distinctly different. Your cortisol levels would be lower, your immune system would be stronger. And it's interesting, Rory Duff, who we both know, Heather, I was at a talk of his a couple of weeks ago, and he was talking about a very long-term friend of his who's a healer. And when she was doing healing, she was doing this kind of breath work, slow in, hold, slow out, and then pausing on the exhale. She had electrodes connected to her. And when she paused on the exhale, that's when she emitted the strongest light and the strongest healing energy, holding on the exhale, the space in between.
Beautiful.
And so Neptune, I think, is very connected to breath because it's invisible, it's ether, but we can be taught by the breath, if you like. The breath can become our teacher, and that is free and simple for everybody. What you've just talked about, that every single person in the world can do. But if we can shift, if more and more of us can shift to that state of peace and love and stillness, we're going to change the world. We're going to change our future timeline away from all the stuff we see on the nightly news to something much more community-based, collaborative, and loving. And that's where I'm headed.
Well, and as you're saying that, it so fits with Greg Braden's research that you take 100 meditators outside a city meditating. They're not out in political action. They're not trying to influence the direction of events around them. They're meditating, going into stillness, connecting with that higher consciousness. And the crime rate went down in the cities, and domestic violence goes down, and the city becomes more calm. That we can create that morphogenic field together as we commit to opening to these Neptunian energies, coming back into that connection with the oneness of the cosmos and co-creating with it and being in those energies together. And as you said, it can manifest in heightened creativity. That as we release our focus on the turbulence around us and open to these energies of the cosmos, they can guide us into our higher selves and our soul's purpose and these amazing ways that we can manifest our unique creative gifts.
Yeah, and I think we're going to have a much clearer sense of being co-creators moving forwards. with these particular uh, aspects that we're talking about, particularly, Neptune at that very last degree of the zodiac. We're really going to get this feeling of our reality being very malleable, much more malleable than we ever understood. Neptune is going to be also in sextile to Sedna, the very beginning of Gemini. It's also in quincunx to Hermia, and those two aspects are going to be running for several years. And all of them are to do with malleability, etc.,
And
transformation and malleability and regeneration. So I think that holds great promise for us, really. And yes, the more people we can get to do this and really understand living from the inside out, not the outside in, and understanding the role of light in this as well, and how light is the way we are moving through space right now, moving through the photon belt, only happens every 12,000 years, give or take 500. The solar flares, because the magnetic field has fallen away to some extent. These are very unusual experiences for us to be happening all at the same time, and the planets at these anaretic degrees. And that is why there's such a huge sense of end of that old episode of 3D fight, polarity, separation, battle, stress, overwhelm, and into, no, I'm stepping into my role as a crystalline light body and co-creator.
yeah,
And I
becoming
see
more
Neptune,
luminous ones.
yeah, and that's very Neptunian.
And I do feel like these, so much of my work has been about the processional cycle and how profound it is to be at this point, the end of one processional cycle, the beginning of a new one. This profound time when every 12,000 years we have this dramatic shift in our consciousness and in our earth experience. And I truly believe the ancient wisdom teachings and prophecies have been guiding us into how this is a unique time in that cycle where we can make this profound evolutionary leap as humanity. And we need to be clearing the old paradigms and opening to these energies that are coming to us from the galactic center, coming through the sun to guide us in taking in this light that is supporting us in clearing and releasing what we need to clear and heal and release to become more fully beings of light. And
Yeah.
I love the meaning of the Sabian symbol of this final degree of Pisces, which I know you and I have been in communication about. It's from Ruger's work. It is the great stone face, meaning we become whatever we idealize.
Yeah.
And I also looked it up do you know the Inside Degrees by Elias Lonsdale, who looks at the
Oh,
Chandra symbols?
no.
Listen to this. It's a different perspective coming more out of the Indian Vedic astrology perspective. But that Sabian symbol for the final degree in Pisces is the image is a large halo in ring formation around the moon. The Earth is pregnant with alternate futures.
Wow.
Each of her progeny, each possible future could become the one chosen. The criteria center around whichever future stream is most genuinely surrendered to the highest will. And it goes on to say that not only is that what's happening in the collective consciousness, but individually, we can choose, as you said, choose these timelines that we want to activate and choose the one that is about co-creating with
Yeah.
the love and wisdom of the cosmos and cosmic consciousness.
Yeah.
And I think that Uranus Neptune sextile is helping activate our clarity about that
Yeah.
and guiding us to open to that expansive cosmic consciousness. And then Uranus and Taurus ground it in how we are embodied here and connecting to the earth. And I love, speaking of midpoints and the creativity of this time, that for a period of time, Eris Xena is the midpoint between that Neptune Uranus sextile, saying,
Wow.
"Find your own unique creative path
Yeah.
and express your fractal expression of creativity and of cosmic consciousness." It's
Yeah,
an
I
ooh,
love that. Yeah. I love that because there's always a paradox with this Aquarian energy of there's a greater sense of finding your unique essence, but then bringing it back to the group, bringing it back to the whole. So it feels slightly paradoxical, but I think we've been so encouraged to always be part of the herd, don't rock the boat, obey the teacher, obey the policeman, obey, that we have compromised our unique selves very often in terms of how we've grown up. And those times are over. There's a much greater sense of what can I truly, in my creativity and uniqueness and gifts, bring to the world, which I haven't perhaps fully so far yet. What's your authenticity? What's your passion? What do you love to do? And Uranus will help us immensely with that because that's all about individualism as well. And I love Erisina. I love her rebellion, and I love the fact she goes her own way and will not, turns up to the wedding and creates mayhem anyway. I love that, that revolutionary impetus because it will take us to a higher state of being.
well,
And
and the planet herself is 44 degrees off the ecliptic. So she's
yeah, yeah,
saying,
wild.
don't follow the conventional path. I don't need to be where all the other planets are. I'm going to
Yeah.
go my own orbit, my own unique path.
Yeah, do it my way. Yeah, I absolutely love that. And it's interesting as well. I think that that Uranus Neptune sextile is so helpful not only to bring the clarity, as you say, but I think we're going to have huge innovations in food growing that are going to be linked to understanding how our consciousness affects the plant growth.
Ah,
Because
beautiful.
you probably know, Heather, that apparently various people, various horticulturalists talk about this. If you spit on the seeds before you plant them, that vegetable will produce what you are deficient in when it
Also,
grows.
if you walk barefoot in the garden,
Yes, yes, very important root chakra. This is the antidote to Neptune out there.
but
But
also the garden will pick up on your energy field and what you're missing and support you in how it grows the herbs or the food.
isn't that incredible? So I think we'll have a much greater sense of consciousness being part of food growing, how we may bless the seeds before, we may meditate, we may, have a particular ceremony even, so that we become part of that plant or vegetable as it grows, or that fruit or whatever. And so that sense of co-creation will go as far as food production. I think it may be bigger in hydroponics as well, and what we do with the water, because Neptune's obviously the water, and how we use structured water and water that's even possibly beyond the EZ water, the gel-like water, that we discover water that's almost magical in its divinity in order to produce incredibly nutritious plants in a way that we've never done it before. So,
Well, both of us so honor the consciousness and energy of water and what we've learned from Veda Austin about her sense of water holding that divine consciousness. And Jude Curvin talks about how it holds the memories of the cosmos.
yeah,
And I love that where Neptune is in the sky through this period of time is in the stars between the constellation of Pisces and Cetus the whale. So I also feel like Neptune is guiding us to reconnect with the wisdom, the consciousness of the waters, of our oceans that hold the memories of our planet, and also the wisdom of the whales and dolphins. And before we got on this recording, you and I were talking about Joan Ocean's work and her
beautiful.
swimming with the dolphins and whales for 40 years of her life, and how they've communicated to her that they're these multidimensional beings who've come to hold that energy of unity consciousness to guide us humans through this evolutionary shift. And as we honor their wisdom and the wisdom of Mother Earth, that's supporting us in coming back into harmony, coming back into connection with cosmic consciousness, to be co-creating this new world together.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah, they're way ahead of us, the dolphins and the whales, and they are that, you know, as most of nature is actually. As usual, we're the laggards. But I've heard from so many people, both sort of marine biologists, but also spiritual people, that the whales and the dolphins are holding this energy, which we are supposed to be stepping into. But once we can start to connect to that, and I think more sea creatures will be discovered, you know, the whole Sedna myth. That is going to help this sense of reconnection to all of nature, that we are just part of nature, and how we've in the past pillaged and exploited and used nature, and yet we cannot live without it. You know, all of our body cycles are linked to the circadian cycle. We are absolutely embedded and entrenched in nature. We can never be separate from it. And so reconnecting to the whales, the dolphins, and the beautiful work that that Joan does, and I've seen some of her videos, and they're absolutely exquisite photography as well. Neptune, um, that can really help this sense of tuning into other beings. Absolutely beautiful. So I think the water is going to teach us a lot. I think we're going to discover more about the wisdom of primary water, which is largely under the mantle of the earth, and how pure and structured and wise that water is. I think this water is, I mean, Veda says this absolutely, but water is going to be our spiritual teacher in a way that we're not fully there yet. Her work is really leading the charge with that. But as she says, the water is the carrier of the light as well. And I think so much more is going to be discovered about light. And I see that partly as Neptune, but partly as Uranus, because Uranus rules electromagnetism, different frequencies. So much, and because we're moving through the photon belt, and because we're having all these solar flares, so much is going to be discovered. And I think it was the last time that Uranus was in Gemini, there was a big discovery about new theory about light coming from a Dutch scientist called Huygens, Huygens, and about waves and particles and how light operates. So I think so much more is going to be discovered, and we are going to become light bodies in a bigger way.
And all the cells of our body communicate through light.
Yes,
And
biophotons.
yes. And, you know, they're doing cutting edge research of finding if you, for example, have an organ out of balance and you shine light through an healthy organ to the animal or person where the organ is out of balance, that the light reminds the organ that's out of balance how to come back into harmony. And I think it resonates with some of Ibrahim Karim's work with biosignatures, that light is guiding us through transmitting those energy signatures to come back into balance. And as we're experiencing all of this light coming to us from the cosmos, it's calling us into balance physically, emotionally, spiritually, energetically. So in the midst of storminess, it's about a cleansing, a healing, way of coming back into harmony and balance with each other, with the earth, with the cosmos. So it's a stormy time, it's a liminal time, but it's guiding us back into that interconnectedness with all that is. And I love that whole image of, as we connect with cosmic consciousness, we come back into harmony with the song of the spheres. And I love that the whales sing these songs that are carried across the ocean and embedded in the water of the seas, guiding us to come back into our own soul song and into harmony with the song of the earth and of the cosmos. We're being called back into harmony again.
And it's interesting, isn't it, that I know it's very healing for autistic people to swim with dolphins and whales. Yeah. They just feel very healed and relaxed by those experiences, as we all do, but autistic people in general, I know they're using it as a therapy. So very beautiful. So what difference do you feel, Heather, once that sextile moves out of Taurus and Pisces and Uranus moves into Gemini and Neptune moves into Aries and then conjoin Saturn, which we have to talk about too?
Well, I do see the conjunction with Saturn as such a powerful time of now we can manifest the new forms. We can bring this creativity and this guidance coming from cosmic consciousness and bring it into form. And I think that as we move into the Neptune Uranus sextile in Aries and Gemini, I mean, you talk a lot in your videos about that shift from earth and water into air and that sense of air and fire. And I think also as we're shifting with those signs and elements, I also see it as guiding us into integrating the energy of the sacred feminine and sacred masculine. Earth
Yeah.
and water, the sextile of Taurus and Neptune, I mean, Pisces, is about integrating those energies of the sacred feminine. Then the shift into Aries and Gemini, now how do we integrate it with the sacred masculine? And
Yeah.
then act from that place of integration, act from that place of unifying the polarities instead of being caught in the polarization and conflict. And in the sky, I think it's absolutely fascinating that Uranus in the sky has been moving through that powerful part of the sky called in the stare of Cetus. Again, the whale,
Yeah.
and Perseus the warrior, which from Greek mythology becomes that conflict between the masculine and the feminine, the warrior trying to have control over the wisdom of the deep that becomes the sea monster, not the whale of wisdom. So I think Uranus is guiding us in getting clarity about how destructive that polarization is
Yeah.
and guiding us back into remembering the integration of the sacred masculine and sacred feminine to come into unity consciousness, to then manifest in our actions, in our thoughts, in our ways of being that are coming from that oneness, that unity and interconnectedness with cosmic consciousness.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's interesting once that sextile moves into Uranus and Gemini, Neptune and Aries, we will start to have a lot more galactic contact and connection. And once we have a sense of we're actually galactic citizens, all of the tit for tats, left versus right wars are going to be like arguments in a schoolyard. They're going to be just ridiculous. Because if we are actually part of a much greater organism with all our galactic family, it's just going to seem so petty and ridiculous. That is going to help us to move to unity consciousness. And I see very much like you, the Saturn-Neptune conjunction as grounding, manifesting the ideal, the dream. It's making real the dream. That's how I see it. It's making real the dream. But for me, it's also spiritual mastery, spiritual Neptune, Saturn mastery. And it's the very first degree of the zodiac. It's a whole new episode for humanity. The very first. It's remarkable that in February 2026, Saturn and Neptune are holding hands in stepping over that threshold into that very first degree of the zodiac with all these other incredible, endings, beginnings, with some of the dwarf planets as well as with these outer planets too. It's quite remarkable. I think I had to go back about 300 years to find when these outer planets were shifting from end of one sign, beginning of another, but that wasn't including in some of the dwarf planets that we had, like Sedna, it was just moved out of 27th of April, moved out of Taurus into Gemini, Cuspy. And so it is, and we're at the end of Kali Yuga as well. we've got layers and layers and layers, whichever way you cut the cake, of endings and beginnings for humanity. So we have to make the best of this as we can, in order to really maximize this opportunity for this biggest evolutionary jump we ever had. And the ridiculous thing is, it's very simple if we turn inwards. Stillness meetings, breath work, bare feet on the ground. It's absolutely, you don't even have to read a book or go on a course. Every single person can do this for free right now. Everybody. And that's what's the simplicity of it is what's thrilling. And why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you do that?
Well, and as you talk about so often, Pam, it's also about coming back to the heart. And Neptune, being that higher octave of Venus, is about open your heart to the love of the cosmos. I think we need to be loved in order to be loving. And I think as we absorb that sense that we are held in the love and wisdom of the cosmos, we are being guided by these energies through this profound time of transformation. We can trust in this journey of unfolding that we're in. And I think some of the ancient wisdom that we've forgotten in modern times is the meaning of going through a rite of passage.
Yeah.
That it is about letting go of the old identity, letting go of the old paradigms, stepping into the mystery, stepping into that liminal time of not knowing, which is where we are now. And then you move into the new identity, the new forms, and a clarity about the new paradigms. But we need to trust that we're in this time of mystery, Neptune, but that we're held and carried by the currents of the cosmos into this new birth, into this ascension, into this new world. So I think a big part of it also is about trust and finding our soul tribe to support us in coming from the heart and connecting at that level and trusting these energies of the cosmos. And also to tap into another aspect of the wisdom of the whales that Joan Ocean talks about, is that they teach us how to open to, she calls it telepathy. That it's not telepathic communication, it's empathic communication. That we can then really hold each other in sensitivity, in love, and care and compassion, and then move together into co-creating that new world. Because I think this time is so much about co-creating with the earth, co-creating with the cosmos, and then being guided into these new forms.
And also, the things you've mentioned are so Neptunian, Heather, the unconditional love, the empathy, the compassion, the sense of oneness, all of those are Neptunian qualities, which are so beautiful. And yes, so important to have a tribe, people of like mind you can connect to, whether that's physically, in person, or whether it's online, that you lose this sense of isolation and aloneness. And I've mentioned this before, but before any important conversation, before doing these videos or meeting anyone, anything important really, I will always set an intention. Let this be for my highest good, the other person's highest good, and the highest good of all. Because if you do that, that can only result in the best outcome if you set that as your intention. And it also develops this sense of connection with other beings, that we move away from this territorial materialism, which we've had so strongly in our lives, into this sense of much greater connection with the animals, the trees, the people, everybody. And something else I've been using, and I've really been amazed by it, is I had a wonderful conversation with Hope Fitzgerald recently about the infinity wave, which is this lemniscate, this figure of 8 made of water. And she downloaded that in 3 visions. And I've been doing that with anything I thought could be a challenging, interaction with anybody. I've been doing that, and it's just been ridiculously miraculous. I think that's just kind of crazy. I don't know how this works, but it works. I'm going to keep on doing it. I'm just going to trust the process. And again, it's water. It's flowing water in the infinity symbol. So, there's such simple tricks we can use. It doesn't have to be complicated. You don't have to have an academic qualification to do these things. You just have to care about other people, come from the heart, love the animals, love the trees, love nature, be in connection, be rooted as often as you can on the earth, because that's going to help your Neptunian drift if it comes in. And we really will get there with these simple practical tools. I think that's how I feel anyway.
Oh, beautiful. And before we stop, let me just share a couple of others that I know of. I love what you described about working with the lemniscate. And another thing to do if you're stressed, if you're overwhelmed, is walk the figure eight. When you walk the figure eight, you're actually rebalancing that communication between your left brain, right brain. And it helps you come back into calm, into balance. And another thing that I do before I teach, before I do a reading, and every day when I start the day, I reach up. I learned this from Alberto Villoldo. Reach up to as far as your hands can reach over your head, which connects you to the eighth chakra. Then pull that energy down around you. And it literally supports you in moving into sacred space, feeling that connection with the love and wisdom of the cosmos. And then for me, it's also a support in letting my ego step out of the way and let the wisdom and love of the cosmos come through me, allowing me to be a vessel for that love and wisdom of the cosmos. And as you said, these are simple practices, but they're powerful. And they support us in coming back to center and coming back into connection with the oneness and then emanating that. And the one other thing that I just say that I think is important with Neptune is pay attention to dreams.
Yes, big time. Dream journal, if you're not doing it already.
I learned that the brain actually doesn't differentiate between the dream reality and the waking reality,
Yeah.
which the Aborigines in Australia have known for thousands of years. But it means as we pay attention to our dreams, we're often getting that spiritual guidance coming through our dreams. And even our waking dreams and visions of what can be, what timeline we can be in that's in the highest good for all. That supports us in visualizing that, energizing that, emanating those energies into the morphogenic field to impact the collective consciousness.
Yeah, beautiful. And it's interesting you mentioned walking the eight, because somebody who does that contacted me, and I'm having a conversation with her in early July, and she's going to do a demo of walking the eight. And somebody else wrote to me and said that bees dance in a figure of eight. It's called bee shamanism. And
Yes.
I know bees aren't shamans, so please don't write to me. In fact, they're way ahead of us, the bees. So, but apparently they dance in a figure of eight. So there's something about the power of this, which is truly remarkable. But yes, dreams, if you're not already doing it, absolutely keep a dream diary, because that's so instructive. That's your higher guidance coming in very clearly for you.
So
I've loved it, Heather.
before we stop, are there any other ways you're personally experiencing this Neptunian energy?
Yeah, I think for me, it's sensitivity to suffering,
Yeah.
which is very Neptunian, and my sort of conversations with animals. Um, Conversations with animals are getting clearer. I'm tuning into the donkeys and the ponies on my morning walk, and my chats with my neighbour's dog who I walk, and telling each other cat jokes, and I'm tuning in to where those animals are at. In a bigger, I've always been very sensitive to animals and love them dearly, but that's become bigger, and I want to connect to that animal world in a much, and to the natural world even in a bigger way than I already have. That's a yearning now, and that's very Neptunian, of course. Yearning. I'm yearning for that vision to live completely in wild nature and be at one with the earth. And that's really strong for me right now, really strong. And I know that's going to take me somewhere, out of the rain. It's going to take me somewhere.
Oh, that's so beautiful, Pam. And I think there's such wisdom in that because, yeah, I too just feel that connection with the plants and animals deepening. And I feel like they know how to
Yeah,
live in harmony and in balance. And they're, if as we open to them, they're guiding us. Plants are helping heal us, animals are helping guide us
yeah,
into this evolutionary leap. As Elizabeth Sahtouris talks about, the plants and animals on the planet are much more mature in their evolutionary journey of knowing the importance of interdependence and interconnectedness.
yeah,
And they can support us in remembering that. And the other thing that I feel is, I don't know, do you sometimes feel like this reality, the veils are very thin,
yeah.
and it can feel like this holodeck we're in, this particular hologram is dissolving. And I often have this sense of that other reality is right there.
Yeah.
Can't quite see it, but it's right there. And as we can just let ourselves feel it, sense it, open to it, it is what will more and more fully manifest.
Beautiful. And the more we can go towards that, the more the 3D reality just goes to dust. The war, the strife, the poverty, the misery, the horrors, the energy supporting that just dissolves. And wouldn't we all want that? Wouldn't we? So these are energetic shifts. They're not negotiating and going to politicians' meetings, flying in private planes, all of, it's an energetic shift which we can all help to manifest. Let it go to dust and create something much more loving.
Well, thank you, Pam. It's so wonderful to be in conversation with you again. And thank you for the ways in which you so emanate that energy of love and wisdom of the cosmos and really support that in the collective consciousness in a very courageous and a very beautiful way. And I am so grateful for our communities also and the way in which it's forming this soul tribe around the planet that is emanating that light
Yeah.
of healing and transformation and oneness.
Yeah. It's a
So
great fight. Bless you, Heather. You do beautiful, beautiful work, and you truly are a spiritual leader for our time. So I thank you for everything you're doing in the world. And I know you have great humility, so would probably resist that accolade. But truly, I know you're doing an enormous amount of work and behind the scenes too. So God bless you. The world is a better place with you in it. And thank you for this conversation. I've loved it.
thank you. And thank you to all in our communities who are working together to co create this new world. Blessings and love to all of you.
Thank you, everyone. Love to you all.